in south suburban Dalton today. First, the state comptroller has suspended some payments to the village because it has failed to follow the law by providing financial reports.
South suburban politician Tiffany Henyard appears to have lost control of both.
We're exploring the controversial story of Dalton Super Mayor Tiffany Henyard today. The self-declared Super Mayor, Tiffany Henyard, has been the subject of significant controversy, particularly due to her relationship with the Dalton City Council, her questionable spending patterns, and her lifestyle. It is possible that she will arrest her own members of the City Council, but let's look at what is happening in Dalton and how Henyard went from being mayor to what some have called the Dalton dictator. In the most recent development, she is allegedly using her power over the police force to target her detractors.
Appointment, that's what the trustees I talked to are calling this. They say the news took them by surprise, and now they're talking to legal counsel to figure out their next.
In 2021, Tiffany Henyard was elected mayor of Dalton, a small town on the outskirts of Chicago. She came to office promising progressive change for the community, but her tenure has since been marred by controversy, raising serious concerns about whether her goal is actually to improve the town or to use her position as a launching pad for personal aspirations. A startling picture of governance tainted by discord and mistrust is painted by the growing scandals engulfing her administration. And claimed misuse of authority, one of the most divisive allegations is that Henyard has been using Dalton's police force improperly as her personal security detail. Critics contend that this action goes beyond moral bounds and exacerbates anxieties about dictatorship. Instead of encouraging openness or unity, critics claim she has worked to stifle dissent, creating an intimidating environment where both residents and critics are reluctant to criticize her policies. Claims in this high-stakes political drama, disobedience and forceful resistance rivals. Initially, Henyard's leadership style signaled a break from tradition by promising bold actions that some hoped would revitalize Dalton. However, her administration's trajectory has spiraled into a series of public disputes and allegations, fueling frustrations that her promises of progress have yielded little tangible results. The tension of a reality TV series left viewers captivated and worried about what lies ahead for Dalton under her administration. There is a growing belief among many that these conflicts may be improved. Henyard's focus is more on gaining power than attending to the urgent needs of her community. Her leadership style has come under heavy fire for being seen as dictatorial. Examples like the purported use of local law enforcement to further personal agendas are examples of tendencies that exacerbate concerns about unrestrained. According to authority reports, citizens have expressed their concerns about these measures in community meetings, but they have been received with a lack of responsibility and a seeming contempt for constructive criticism, which has widened the gap between the tension between Henyard and the people she was elected to represent, which was characterized by contentious public arguments during her tenure, highlights a larger rift within the municipality of Dalton, which yearns for efficient leadership that is inclusive. The stories are at the heart of this fight. Supporters and critics of Henyard have presented her involvement in remarkably different ways, with the former highlighting her fortitude in the face of unrelenting criticism that she is a misunderstood individual who is steadfast in her commitment to her vision for Dalton despite significant resistance. In contrast, her detractors see her actions as representative of a leadership style that prioritizes optics and control over collaboration in substance. The accusations of misusing public resources for private gain, particularly through alleged mismanagement of the police department, resonate as a focal point of dissatisfaction, suggesting a governance model that is increasingly at odds with democratic principles. Almost every facet of Henyard's administration has been affected by this dispute, which has created a noticeable strain that is present in both town hall meetings and local conversations. Stories of high-profile expenditures and decisions that appear to be disconnected from urgent community needs have heightened skepticism about her priorities and cast doubt on her commitment to equitable, effective leadership. The sharp contrast between Henyard's public persona and the lived experiences of many residents has fueled suspicions of disillusionment. The stakes feel particularly high for a town like Dalton, where socioeconomic In light of these difficulties, coordinated, open efforts are required to solve systemic problems. Henyard's term has come to reflect the fight for the core principles of accountability and representation, not only for politics or policy. The accusations against Henyard, whether they concern her alleged misuse of municipal resources for private gain, her resistance to supervision, or her harsh repression of dissent, present a concerning picture of leadership that falls short of the standards set by the people who once trusted her. Change would be accelerated by administration, express frustration, their voices reverberating in meetings and public statements that challenge the trajectory of her governance. Yet Henyard, undeterred by criticism, continues to project confidence, dismissing many of these concerns as politically motivated efforts to undermine.
Wrong is wrong, and there's a time to hold people responsible and accountable for that.
Under Mayor Tiffany Henyard's direction, the town hall meeting was tense as residents and council members gathered for what was anticipated to be another evening of fraudulent exchanges. While some attendees came hoping to address pressing issues impacting the town of Dolton, others were drawn to the spectacle in anticipation of the drama that frequently accompanied such accounts from gathering witnesses showing unnerving. This dynamic site, where Henyard regularly enters with police officers allegedly acting as her personal detail, has come to represent a leadership style that critics have characterized as heavy-handed and autocratic. Henyard's contempt for criticism is well known, and her reactions to criticism have only strengthened claims that her leadership style is motivated more by self-preservation than cooperation. In a recent Facebook Live broadcast, Henyard, in her remarks, she painted a vivid picture of a mayor embattled not only with the public, but also with her own government colleagues, suggesting a political landscape mired in mistrust and division. She also threatened legal action against some council members, accusing them of taking part in what she called a money grab conspiracy. This accusation adds another layer of complexity to an already fractured administration. Adding fuel to the fire, reports have emerged that Henyard has ordered taxpayer-funded police officers and other public servants to monitor her alleged enemies, including allegedly following council members around the city. This is seen by many as an overt intimidation strategy intended to uphold her authority and quell dissent. The way that law enforcement has been used has angered locals, who see it as an abuse of, a blatant disregard for democratic values, and the use of public resources. This purported tactic, according to opponents, is part of a larger trend of the mayor putting personal grudges ahead of the common good. Town hall meetings have become battlegrounds for power and responsibility rather than forums for productive discourse due to the growing tension between Henyard and other community factions. These events increasingly highlight them. The mayor's distance from the people she was elected to represent is growing as allegations of wrongdoing and power abuse persist, and detractors are speaking out more to call for openness and leadership that prioritizes the common good.
Police chief,
There are now more serious accusations against Mayor Tiffany Henyard. Insiders say that Henyard has ordered police officers to keep an eye on council members who have openly opposed her plans, going beyond simple political disputes to accusations of flagrant abuse of power. If accurate, these charges highlight a deliberate and bold attempt to bolster power while ignoring criticism at the price of democratic integrity, one that is very unsettling according to a revelation. Henyard requested that Robert Collins, Dalton's former chief of police, target particular people on her behalf. This request was purportedly made in order to advance her political objective. Caused indignation among both residents and council members. Such actions, according to detractors, are indicative of a mayor who prioritizes preserving her personal authority over attending to the urgent issues facing her city. The consequences of these purported power struggles extend well beyond personal grudges. Residents and council members see these maneuvers as straightforward. Dangers to their voices and independence. Many inhabitants of Dolton have voiced their intense frustration, believing that their rights to participate in local politics are being systematically undermined by an administration that is reluctant to accept dissent. These incidents have fueled a growing fire of discontent, prompting critical Henyard's aggressive tactics, which her critics describe as authoritarian and dismissive, have polarized the community and raised concerns about accountability and leadership in a town experiencing political turmoil. Those calling for change contend that her actions betray the trust placed in her as an elected official and reveal a major turning point in the relationship between Henyard and the people she governs has been marked by these audacious and allegedly coercive actions, which have sparked a palpable and widespread outrage for the principles of transparency and fairness in a small town like Dolton, where community trust is fundamental.
Talked to Tiffany Henyard's landlord, and she says she came to this Thornton Township meeting Tuesday night hoping to get paid what she...
The alleged financial mismanagement that has put Dolton in a precarious financial position is the most notable of the many scandals surrounding Mayor Tiffany Henyard. Accusations of extravagant spending and questionable financial priorities have dominated the conversation, portraying Henyard as a leader more focused on extravagance than fiscal responsibility. Lori Lightfoot's reports support the accusations. The findings of Lightfoot, the former mayor of Chicago who was tasked with evaluating Dolton's financial situation, provide a troubling picture of how, under Henyard's direction, the town's general fund balance fell from a healthy $561 million surplus to an astounding $365 million deficit by May 2024. Residents and critics alike are questioning where all the money went after reading this financial note, which paints a concerning picture of Dolton's finances based on Lightfoot's inquiry. It seems that funds that were initially allocated for infrastructure upgrades and necessary public services have instead been used on extravagant events that many view as pointless or self-serving. Personal projects and luxury trips are at the top of the list of dubious expenditures that detractors claim have not contributed much to the community at large. Residents of Dolton are becoming increasingly suspicious of the town's leadership since they believe they have a greater stake in optics than self-promotion as opposed to meeting urgent community needs. Henyard's detractors have not held back in pointing out the correlation between her purported spending patterns and the town's growing debt. As Dolton's financial situation worsens, residents' patience is eroding, with many believing the mayor's priorities are essentially at odds with what is best for the town. Public indignation has increased as these issues combine with Henyard's rising notoriety for high-handed leadership and a propensity to stifle criticism have helped Henyard maintain her innocence and frequently shift the responsibility to outside parties or political rivals. But this approach hasn't done much to ease the seething resentment among the town's residents. The financial slump under Henyard's leadership has real repercussions for Dolton's community as supplies are running low, causing delays. It's not just figures on a ledger. Economic strain has further widened the divide between the town's administration and its citizens, who see their taxes disappearing into projects they believe do not serve the public interest in town hall meetings and public forums, due to infrastructure projects and cuts to programs vital to the town's well-being. People have expressed their displeasure, calling for explanations and accountability from a leader they feel has failed them. To make matters more complicated, there are claims that some have argued that Henyard's use of municipal funds for events and projects is an attempt to curry favor with certain constituencies, strengthening her political base even as broader community support fades. These accusations cast Henyard's financial decisions in an even harsher light, implying that her spending may be motivated more by self-preservation than by governance in a contentious situation. Governmental atmosphere as the financial crisis worsens, the story of Henyard's reign becomes more and more bleak. Many now see what was formerly perceived as a contentious administration as a warning about unbridled power and misguided agendas. Dolton is currently at a crossroads, battling not only the current economic issues but also the wider ramifications of leadership that has been criticized for prioritizing personal aspirations regarding public trust. In the midst of all this chaos, one thing is certain: the people of Dolton are not content to sit idly by. They have started to organize their calls for accountability, which are becoming louder and more urgent every day, whether through petitions, The question that looms large is whether the town can recover from the financial and reputational damage inflicted during Henyard's term, or whether these controversies mark the beginning of a longer decline. Public protests or grassroots initiatives. Dolton residents are expressing their displeasure, indicating a general unwillingness to accept the current situation. As locals work to recover their town's future from what they perceive to be the grip of poor leadership and neglect, this grassroots movement may end up being the most important check on Henyard's power.
Arrest for individuals involved. I will be pressing charges.
This is where the shocking part starts. Henyard allegedly used Dune's credit cards to make purchases at Amazon, Target, Walgreens, and Wayfair for her own upscale tastes. The Lightfoots report details specific transactions, including an astounding $43,000 on Amazon. Both trustees and residents were shocked by the facts, and many were left wondering how these purchases could possibly aid a struggling municipality like the one that involved the over $8,000 Wayfair charge in a single day and 2 further purchases for roughly $5,000 each on the same day. Although it's just another day in the life of a superpower, Dolton Henyard has reportedly been taking opulent vacations, and I'm sure you've been doing more than just shopping online. According to Village records, she and her staff enjoyed first-class travel to cities like New York, spending thousands on upscale lodging in Atlanta and Portland. She also stayed at the Four Seasons in Atlanta, accruing nearly $9,000 in hotel expenses, and spent $113,000 at the Marriott Marquis in Times Square during her trip to New York. Residents of Dolton are experiencing trouble getting essential services, and some are even concerned that the town may not be able to pay its staff for the hen house there. Since this spending spree has been mentioned, many Dolton residents, including Andrew McKay, feel personally duped by the town's apparent lack of concern for its financial status. According to McKay, there are elderly residents who cannot afford even the most basic necessities, and trustees like Tammy Brown are calling for reform. If locals have their way, hen stays might be coming to an end because Brown has said that Dolton needs a clean house by the next election because of how powerful Henyard is. Let's go back a bit because she is also the supervisor of nearby Thoron Township, where she is said to have employed similar tactics. According to Thoron Township's credit card records, she spent more than $67,000 on trips, meals, and other expenses that critics say have little to do with township business. She has been spotted going to upscale dinners and hanging out with famous people, including the president, at one point. Her critics say that these outings are just publicity stunts, but Henyard defends her actions by saying that these trips are necessary for building relationships and securing resources for her community. But residents aren't convinced. And as if all of this weren't enough, the FBI is reportedly investigating her. Oversight target Thornton Township in Wesleyan have received federal subpoenas, which could pose serious issues for Henyard. Additionally, investigators are investigating Lightfoot's findings that show financial misconduct, while her supporters argue the investigation is merely a smear campaign. Meanwhile, critics hope it will bring much-needed transparency to the village's financial difficulties. You might think that given the increased federal investigation, Henyard would be keeping quiet, but that's not her way. Instead, she's increasing her efforts and running for re-election with the assurance of someone who thinks they're not to be defeated. Even with all of the criticism, she maintains that she is still Doan's best choice, asserting that her opponents are merely envious of her success, saying that everything we do is for the people. But we're being attacked to Henyard, and the ongoing investigations are just one more challenge for her to overcome. Of course, her detractors have a different perspective, with many claiming that Henyard has used intimidation tactics, allegedly targeting business owners to oppose her campaign. For example, Lawrence Gardner, the owner of a trucking company, claims his license was revoked after he refused to pay Henyard's so-called contributions. Gardner claims that Henyard demanded an annual donation, and when he stopped paying, city officials found reasons to close his business. This is not an isolated incident, as other business owners have come forward with similar claims that Henyard uses her position of authority to retaliate against anyone who doesn't comply. Despite Henyard's preparations to rectify her history, these stories portray a leader who is more focused on holding onto power than helping her community. Her lamb, Chanetta Hall, filed an eviction case against her lover, Kamo Woods, claiming that Henyard had failed to pay rent. She also says that since August Bull, who had previously considered Henyard had the property's locks modified to prevent her from entering. Paul shares many of Yulan's frustrations because she feels deceived about what will happen to Dolton's supermayor as federal investigations continue. Many are wondering whether Henyard's controversial reign will end or if she will continue to hold on to power by using her control over the police and the town's resources to silence her critics.